to CoJo's Math. Okay, today we're going to talk about converting metric units. Now, I told you this was going to be difficult, and at this point in time, you should know the different categories for distance, mass, and capacity. Mass is basically what we think of as weight, and capacity is how much something holds in liquid form. Now, but in the metric units, we don't call it weight and liquid. We call it mass and capacity. So you want to use that terminology when you're using metric units. So you should know the parts of the meter, and that the meter is the one that we go to the most, but that there's a milliliter that's smaller, so it goes millimeter, then centimeter, then meter, then kilometer. It's not kilometer, they say kilometer. But for our purposes right now, just to get you with the basic conversions, we're going to stick with the smallest one and the largest one. We're going to take out centimeter. Now, centimeter is very important, but we're not going to do conversions with centimeter right now. I think it's more important to get the basic, okay? It's easier if we only concentrate on the unit that's the smallest in metric compared to the one that's used the most frequently and the larger. So we're going to be talking about like millimeter, kilometer for meters. With grams, we're going to be talking about milligrams and kilograms. And with liters, we're going to be talking about milliliter and kilometer. So we're not going to do any conversions with centimeters yet, just so we can learn it. Now you have to know those terms, and you have to know what they're associated with. That meter is distance, that gram is mass, and that liter is capacity. You have to know that to go forward. All right? So if you don't know that, you need to memorize it as soon as possible, because you're going to get bit on the test if you don't. All right. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to deal with millimeters and kilometers. The milli and the killa. Okay, those are the two extremes we're going to deal with in comparison to meter, gram, and liter. Okay, we'll go this way. So now let's talk about it. The biggest thing that it's going to be hard for you, that you just got to get over the hump, is dealing with that when we change, when we go back and forth, we're going to use the center, the ones that we use the most frequently, which are going to be gram, liter, and, oh, I left it out, meter. There's a meter here. So meter, gram, and liter. Those are the units that we use the most frequently. And then in relation to that, the millimeter, the milligram, and the milliliter are the smallest ones. And the kilometer, the kilogram, and the kiloliter are the largest ones. Going either way is 1,000. That's important. So we're not dealing with any other base 10 number except 1,000. That's the one we're dealing with. So the hard part is going to be that when we go to the smaller to the larger, okay, the smaller to the larger, well, actually, this is saying larger to smaller. I wrote it backwards. So when you're going larger to smaller, okay, anytime we're going larger to smaller, we multiply. And I want you to think about that for a second. If I weigh in pounds, right, okay, say I weigh 150 pounds, pretty close, really, it is, 150 pounds. So I weigh 150 pounds. And there's 16 ounces in a pound. And I said to you, I want to know how many ounces I weigh. Well, it would be ridiculous for me to ask you to say, tell me how many ounces I weigh. But you could do it. But if I weigh 150 pounds, and there's 16 ounces in a pound, do I multiply to see how many ounces I get, or do I divide? I'm going for a larger number, a larger unit, pounds. Pounds is larger than ounces. So I'm going to multiply. So if I go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, I multiply. So if I'm going from a kilometer to a meter, I multiply by 1,000. If I go from a meter to a millimeter, I multiply by 1,000, because there's more millimeters in meters. There's more meters in kilometers. And think of ounces and pounds. That should help you. Likewise, for all of these on the right, I'm going to multiply whenever I go from the larger to the smaller units. Okay, and right now I'm just going to be doing 1 unit at a time. So I would go kilometer to meter. So if I had so many meters, then I would multiply however many kilometers I have by 1,000 to see how many meters I get. If I gave you 5 meters and I said how many millimeters are in 5 meters, I would multiply by 1,000 to say 5 meters is 5,000 millimeters. Okay? Likewise, if I move from the smaller to the larger unit, then I'm going to divide by 1,000. Because just like this, if I told you that I had 100,000, if I weighed 100,000 ounces, I just made that up. I hope I don't weigh 100,000 ounces. I don't know, but you can find out. Because if I have 100,000 ounces and I want to find out how many pounds that is, then I would simply say 100,000. I wouldn't multiply by 1,000 by 16 because there's 16 ounces in a pound. So for every 16 ounces, there's a pound. So I'm going to say 100,000 divided by 16. So I want you to do that on the calculator, write it down, pause the video, and then bring that to class tomorrow and tell me how many pounds I would weigh. If I told you I weighed 100,000 ounces, how many pounds would that be? You should get something less than 100,000 because you're taking all these ounces and putting them into pounds. So that's how you have to think. So if we're going from the smaller unit to the larger unit, then we divide by 1,000 because we want fewer units with the larger units. If we're going from the larger unit to the smaller unit, then we multiply. But you have to know these terms and how they go together. Okay, so now let's look at this. You have to memorize that. Larger to smaller, you multiply. Smaller to larger, you divide by 1,000. Which is, if you multiply by 1,000, you're simply moving the decimal place how many places? 3 places, because there's 3 zeros. If we multiply by 10, we move the decimal place 1 place. If we multiply by 100, we move the decimal place 2 places. So if we multiply by 1,000, we simply move the decimal place 3 places. If we divide by 1,000, then we would move the decimal places to the left 3 times. If we divide by 100, we would move the decimal place to the left 2 times because we're making the number smaller. So look, if I'm going from 4.2 kilometers to how many meters is that? Well, you got to know that km stands for kilometers, and it's larger than meters, and it's 1 movement away that we're learning today. So we multiply by 1,000 because we're going to have more meters than kilometers. So we'd say times 1,000 because we're going from larger to smaller. Larger to smaller, we multiply because we need more. So we're going to move the decimal place 3 places. 1, 2, 3. Well, we moved it. We have a 2 there, so how many zeros do we add? 2. So it becomes 4,200 meters. That's our answer. We're converting it from kilometers to meters. Likewise, there it is. 4.2 times 1,000 is 4,200 meters. And that's how you show your work. You just write it like that. Now look, if I said how many 3,200 milligrams is how many grams? Now we're moving from small to large. So we have all, that's like ounces to pounds. So we have all these small units that we're going to kind of put in little groups to get larger units. So we're not going to have more larger units, we're going to have less. So if we have 3,200 milligrams that we're going to change to grams, we divide by 1,000. So we divide by 1,000, we move the decimal place, remember it's at the end here, 1, 2, 3, and we get 1, 2, 3. I messed up, didn't I? It's 3.2 grams. So you got to watch out, you got to be careful. So it's 3.2 grams. So the whole thing that you're going to have to take away from this video that you're going to have to remember is when you go from a larger metric unit to a smaller metric unit, in this, only in these terms, because we're not doing them all, you're going to move up, you're going to eat your a larger to a smaller, you're going to multiply by 1,000. If you go from a smaller to a larger, you're going to have less, so you divide. Now you're going to have to do comparisons, where you have, okay, if I have 1.4 kiloliters, how does that compare to 1,400 liters? Well, you're going to need to convert one or the other. That's up to you. You can say I'm going from large to small, so you can express this in liters instead of kiloliters, or you can go from small to large and express this as where you divide. So I'm going to go, it's up to you, but you just have to show your work only on one side. So I'm going to change this to kiloliters. So if I'm going from small to large, I'm going to divide. You got to know that. So if I divide by 1,000, I would do this, and I would move the decimal place 3 places, and then I have to write 1.4 kiloliters. So 1.4 kiloliters to 1.4 kiloliters is equal. Now we go to 1.59 grams to 150 milligrams. Okay, so I'm going grams to milligrams or milligrams. This time I'll go large to small because I'll mix it up. You don't have to do it. So I'm going to multiply by 1,000 here. So I go over 1 and I add 2 zeros and I get 1,500 grams. Well, 1,500 grams is how many milligrams? Milligrams. 1,500 milligrams is compared to how many milligrams? It's larger. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to do these two. 6,800 meters to 6.8 kilometers and 7.2 liters to 7,200 milliliters. Okay, pause the video, then come back. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. Okay, I don't know which one you changed it to, but I'm going to here. This is kilometers. I'm going to multiply by 1,000 to make it meters. You could have divided over here. 1, so I get 6,800 meters. Well, that's equal. And then over here, 7.2 liters to 7,200 milliliters. I'm going to multiply by 1,000, add 2 zeros. I get 7,200 milliliters to that. Then it's what? It's equal. They're still both equal. All right, because I'm going liters to milliliters, so I multiply. I go meters to kilometers, so I'm going to multiply here because I'm going to go backwards. So I hope you did well. If not, you got to ask some questions. So now I want you to try these. Okay, let's pause the video and convert these. Over here on the left, put small to large or large to small and what operation you have to do. Do you understand? So you're going to convert it. You're going to show your work. And over here, you're going to go small to large or large to small, and if it was division or multiplication. Okay, pause the video, and when you're done, come back. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. All right, here we go. So this is what you should have. On the first one, it's smaller to larger. So you're dividing. So you should have all of this right here. I'm 6,800 meters divided by 1,000 becomes 6.8 kilometers. This is larger to smaller, so I'm multiplying. 54 meters to millimeters, I'm going to multiply by 1,000, so I get 54,000 millimeters. Here, smaller to larger, I divide because I'm going to grams to kilograms, so I'm going to divide by 1,000, so I get 0.1 kilograms. Here, larger to smaller, grams to milligrams, I multiply by 1,000, so I get 1,500,000 milligrams. Now I want you to complete these two and bring these to class tomorrow. 0.2 kilograms, greater than, less than, or equal to 184 grams, and 36,000 milliliters compared to 3.6 liters. Bring me the answers. Write down 2 things that you learned and 1 question. Oh, wait. There's somebody back here who wants to say something. Oh my gosh. It's Baby Al. How you doing, Baby Al? You have something to say? What do you have to say? Remember, smaller to larger, you 1,000, larger to smaller, you multiply by 1,000. Why, thank you, baby owl. You have a good one. And you guys have a good one too. All right, I'll see you later.